Welcome back to Contention on ADH TV. I'm your host, James Mathias. After 30 years of a compulsory superannuation system, what have you got to look forward to in retirement? Well, it's not the relaxed, secure nirvana promised by the industry super funds television ads. For a start, the rise of compulsory superannuation has coincided with a decrease in home ownership amongst both retirees and young people. It was not meant to be like this. Compulsory super was meant to be the magic pudding of retirement. Introducing the scheme's legislation to Parliament in 1992, then Treasurer Paul Keating said that, quote, "By the beginning of the next century, virtually all employees will be accumulating substantial superannuation savings to help fund their retirement income. This increased self-provision for retirement will permit a higher standard of living in retirement than if we continued to rely on the age pension alone. The increased self-provision will also enable future Commonwealth governments to improve the retirement conditions for those Australians who were unable to fund adequately their own retirement incomes." That hasn't happened. In fact, the opposite is true. 157,000 Australians over the age of 75 are drawing rental assistance from the Commonwealth. Or look at it this way. In the decade from 2011 to 2021, the number of people aged over 65 increased by 34%. But the number of people aged over 65 who are renters increased by 73%. That is twice the rate. Super was meant to provide us a more dignified and secure retirement. It has failed. And the reason it has done this is because it has diverted our savings away from the one investment that would give us dignity and security in old age: a home. Just by owning your home in retirement, you get on average a $23,000 per year benefit in not having to pay any rent. That's almost equivalent to the entire age pension. Not to mention that you have an asset that continues to increase in value and provides options to downsize, rent out, and many other benefits. Home ownership, however, doesn't just happen overnight. You have to start young. $3,466 per month over 30 years is the average time and cost to pay off a mortgage in Australia. So if you're not in the housing market by 37, then your chances of retiring, owning your own home, are shredded unless you're earning a high salary. But let's not forget that 11% of everybody's wages are going into compulsory super, not as your money, but to be managed by someone else until you hit near 70. Because heavens forbid you making decisions about your money for you. The average 35 to 44-year-old makes $112,710 annually, meaning that more than $12,000 per year is taken from them into this so-called nest egg. And don't forget the 15 to 20 years of foregone wages as well, from when you started working. The effects are there for everyone to see. 54.2% of those born between 1947 and 51 were homeowners by their mid-20s. Now, for the current generation, it's just 37.4%. This means that by 2056, as low as 57% of all 65s, those aged over 65, will own their own home, forcing an even larger amount of people onto rental assistance and other Commonwealth support payments. Let's not mince our words here. This system is a mess and disgracefully is causing more people to retire not owning their own homes. But there is one group of people who this is benefiting, and quite nicely at that. It's the very people in the industry superannuation funds who patronisingly tell us they can manage our own money better than our own money better than us. And why wouldn't they? In the year ending 30 June 2021, for example, the industry drew $9.1 billion in fees from just 21.3 million member accounts. It's a big business where just a 0.5% increase in the fees over the lifetime of your super can cost you $100,000 in retirement. You know that little diamond hand thing that they do when they say compare the pair in the ads? I don't buy it. Industry super is the greatest example of vested interests masquerading as the people's saviour I've ever seen. And it now has a new industry group called the Super Members Council. The chair of this august body? None other than former Labor Cabinet Minister Nicola Roxon. She is joined on the board by this guy, former Labor Treasurer Wayne Swan. Their first foray into the public debate was to preemptively try to rebut evidence I gave on this topic to a Senate committee on the 12th of March this year. I was at the hearing representing the Menzies Research Centre, which has been researching the dire consequences of compulsory superannuation for home ownership. Naturally, my testimony was to advocate for more options and more individual freedoms in superannuation by saying that the Federal Coalition's policy to allow people to access up to 40% of their super to buy their first home is a good thing. The Super Members Council published a press release saying that this would only cause house prices to go up by as much as 10%. Well, no. But that sort of basic economics is beyond the expertise of these people who are now managing trillions of dollars of other people's money. The best place to look as an international comparison is Canada, as they act as a great example for both what the Coalition is proposing by allowing flexibility in your super to be used for a first home, and Labor's government shared equity scheme. Up until recently, Canada had both. One ended in failure, whilst the other is thriving with minimal effect on house prices. Introduced in 1992, Canada's Home Buyers Plan allows people to withdraw up to $40,000 from their voluntary retirement savings plan to put towards the deposits on their first houses. That person then has 15 years to pay back the nominal amount. An average of 87,500 Canadians now take advantage of the system each year, and over 2.7 million people have accessed it since inception. In Toronto, the average number of homes sold in the 10 years post its introduction increased by 50%. But during that same period, house prices increased at 1/4 of what they did in the previous 10 years. Coincidentally, the Trudeau government introduced a similar policy in 2019 to what the socialist Albanese government is implementing in Australia right now. The government loans you the money for the purchase of your first home and takes an equity stake in it. To say this policy has been a failure would be an understatement. Just 15,925 Canadians accessed the scheme, disbursing only $269 million of the budgeted $1.25 billion, resulting in the scheme being axed altogether last month. And why? Well, it would seem clear to me that people don't exactly want the government to have a shared equity stake in their home. Finally, let's talk about supply. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, in September of 2011, we had 9 million residential dwellings. By September of 2023, 12 years later, we had 11 million dwellings. It took us 12 years to build just 2 million homes. That's not many at all. And when you consider that during the same period, and again, according to the ABS, we had a net migration intake of 2,612,670 people. That number's paltry. Don't worry though. In the middle of this national housing crisis, the Albanese government has come up with a great solution to it all. They have changed the National Construction Code to try and have every new home in Australia compliant with a 7-star energy rating and national living requirements. Some of these changes come into effect next month. What's that, you say? What does it mean? Well, everything from the orientation of your home to the glass used and even the way the bathroom walls are built for every new home will be affected. When the changes were agreed by the states and territories in 2022, the Minister Ed Husick said, quote, "The agreement to make new homes more energy efficient will mean Australians have lower energy bills and be more comfortable all year round. This improvement will also help Australia with the transition to net zero emissions by 2050 by reducing the energy use in our new homes." Seriously, is he pulling our leg or something? Neither of those statements will ever be true. It's sickening to think he is adding more bureaucracy and red tape, slowing down approvals, and then there's the cost. As of May this year, the Victorian government has adopted this full policy changes. Melbourne's sustainable home builder, Arden Homes, last year calculated the cost of upgrades needed to boost the 40 homes the company has in Verona from its 6-star all-electric to 7 stars would cost home buyers an additional $10,591 per home. That's from an already high 6-star to 7-star standard. The Housing Industry Association estimates that these changes will cost an additional $25,000 per new home built. Apartments aren't safe either. These changes mean that all new apartments must provide access to charging stations for 100% of occupants. I'm not even sure the coal grid in Victoria could handle that load all at once. You could not make this stuff up. Instead of more affordable homes being built, more often they've made changes that will cause the opposite. The Labor government is causing fewer homes to be built at a higher price, and then they want the government to have a shared equity stake in it. The Super Members Council are dead against you using your own money for the deposit on a house, saying they can manage your money better than you ever could, whilst also protecting those fat fees. For how much longer should we believe that the superannuation industry, as it stands, is for us? It is insulting, and it's been going on for 30 years. Well, that's all from me. For more news and opinion, check out adh.tv to stay up to date with the best common sense commentary in Australia. I'm James Mathias, and I'll talk to you next week.